Savage, born in the wild. Boom, boom, boom. Hot like a fever, heart is on fire. I've been waiting for ya. I've been waiting for ya. I'm on the loose, running the game, never get tired. You try to erase me like a fade into the walls. Cover the tracks, yeah, like it wasn't there at all. Now look who's back. Tipping my tongue, sniffing you out. Talk a big game, but weigh you down. I can see right through ya. I can see right through ya. Where are you now? Full moon rise, I'm running you down. You try to erase me like a fade into the walls. Cover the tracks, yeah, like it wasn't there at all. Now look who's back.
Hey guys, so thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of the weekend to spend it with me. I have no idea how the audio is because I can't monitor. I'm on my laptop and I'm in the kitchen and I'm using a Deity microphone. Hey David, thanks for stopping by. Tyler, thanks for stopping by. And Bosque Audio Visuals, thanks for stopping by. You guys are awesome. So if we have audio problems, clearly we're going to stop the live stream and I will, I'm gonna remake this video just so you all know in a more produced way. But today, my whole team and I have been working really hard at revamping all of the different LUTs and LUT packs that we've been creating over the years, which by the way, I'm really proud of my team and everything that they've been able to accomplish, because we just sold, or we went over 20,000 downloads of these LUTs that we've created. So basically what I did is I asked everyone to focus on a camera and one of the looks for the LUTs, and we're going to update them. And the goal is to have a LUT pack for every camera that we've used and have released at this point, or that we actually have in inventory, and have it all match so that if you're shooting on a Sony, but your B cam is a Canon, that it's easy enough to match them in post. And we want to do this across, basically all the cameras that we own, and that's going to help. So thanks for letting me know that the audio is sounding good. Really appreciate that. And you guys, for those of you who subscribe to the channel and who have followed the channel, you know that last week I released a video very similar to this one, in fact with the same thumbnail, basically saying, is Cinetone worth it? Because there's been a lot of hype and a lot of chatter and communication about bringing Cinetone to the Sony a7S III, which of course now is a thing. It actually did happen. I finally did update my firmware yesterday. I'm on the newest version of Mac OS, which is not supported, which really meant I had to borrow a computer to get my Sony a7S III updated. But it worked and it's there. In a previous video, again, that was released here on the channel, I showed the weakness of S.Cinetone. And in my opinion, and I don't have to be right, and you all, whoever watches this later, especially the Sony users, some of the people that are pretty fanatic about Sony, may not agree with me, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is, S.Cinetone is really made for like this application, what I'm doing right now. It's a live thing. There is no color correction, and there really isn't any wiggle room in post-production that allow you to color grade S.Cinetone. You might be able to do some minor corrections, like, and by the way, if you clip something in S.Cinetone, it's clipped, it's not coming back. So you can't recover that from that standpoint, but you might be able to adjust your white balance without actually creating artifacts. But if you begin to push and pull as if you were going to, maybe add contrast or remove contrast, or do a color correction that is significant, as in more than a minor tweak to S.Cinetone, you begin to experience and see artifacts. And those are things that are not really awesome. For example, I don't want to see noise in my subject's eyes, or if it's a female, noise in the hair, or blockiness in the hair, or artifacts in the hair, because I pushed that codec just a little bit more than it needed to. And I think for those of you who haven't used S.Cinetone, what you'll notice is that when you bring it into Resolve, the waveform has already been expanded. So you're already maximizing what S.Cinetone is going to give you, and why it is that I'm saying basically you're limited to maybe some minor white balance adjustments. And maybe if you're okay with crushing dark areas or blowing out highlights, you might be able to make a little bit more, an additional adjustment. But beyond that, anytime that you stretch that waveform, you're introducing damage to your clip. And that's why I don't believe S.Cinetone is worth it. And I'm going to show you guys the difference, now. And in fact, why don't we just jump right into Resolve before I just go off on this other tangent here. And I was going to do picture-in-picture, but I'm not going to do picture-in-picture. I'm just going to show my desktop. And let's see, why is that open? Let's hide it. Okay. And now I'm going to pull up Resolve. So I'm going to see, okay, I need to move some stuff around because some of these windows are in my way. So let's see, if I move them out of my way, and this is of course going to now make it so I can't see the chat, just so that you all know. So I will get back to the chat when I can, because I need as much space as I can right now. So here's a clip that's captured in S.Cinetone, right? I'm sorry, S.Cinetone. This is captured in S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine. So this is what gives us the maximum amount of dynamic range out of the Sony cameras that have the ability to capture in S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine, which at this point, if I'm not mistaken, are the FX9, FX6, FX3, Sony a7S III. So this clip was actually taken on the FX6. And what I'm going to show you is these LUTs that we've been working on. So I have S-Log3 LUTs now, and I'm going to show you, I'll show you this one. It's kind of an extreme example, but that's one-click correction, and I don't know if it'll, yeah, it will play. Good. I thought it might not play because I'm live streaming and I'm on the laptop of all things. But there are no artifacts in her hair, in the gradients, in the skin, in the background. This is direct sunlight hitting the stool here behind her. And this looks really, really good. If I tried that, and maybe, let's see if I do have this clip. So this is what S.Cinetone looks like straight out of the camera when you don't screw up the exposure. So this looks good, but to me, this image is a little under-saturated, which to me makes it feel a little bit dead. And I'm not saying it's a bad image, it's a good image, but it is not as good as what you can get out of S-Log3. Because what you'll notice here in the chip chart right away is that the red chip and this blue chip and even the green chip, they're all a little bit oversaturated, and yet this image looks, in my opinion, flat. So, okay, let's see, what am I doing here? So this is why I'm saying I would rather have an image that looks like this over S.Cinetone, because I can go right down the list, and you notice there aren't any other corrections. In fact, I'll just show you that there aren't any other corrections. There aren't any other corrections at all on this clip other than that super simple LUT that we worked out. And I'll change it to, let's go to broadcast, which this one is not as saturated. But this, in my opinion, again, looks much more alive, much more where the colors need to be, where the tonality needs to be, versus the straight out of the camera S.Cinetone. And again, there's nothing wrong with this if you're doing like a live broadcast or something, but if you're actually working on a project where color correction and color grading are part of the process, this is not something, what we're seeing on screen now is not something that we are able to accomplish with S.Cinetone. Because if I try to push my image to look like this, I will break the codec. I will get artifacts and it will look horrible. Let's try something a little bit more extreme just to kind of prove that same point. And I'm gonna go with Sunny. Sunny is like really extreme. And let me play this clip, and I have no idea what the quality is on YouTube, but I don't see any artifacts in this image on my computer as I'm streaming this. And this is an extreme correction and an extreme color grade on S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine that could never be accomplished with S.Cinetone. And why do I keep going back to S.Cinetone? Because there was a gentleman, let me go back to my, how do I go back to, oh, here we go. And now, how do I get the comments back? Because that's what's really gonna suck if I can't get my comments back. There we go. Cool, they're back. So there was someone on YouTube that constantly kept arguing with me about how people all over the internet are color grading S.Cinetone. And what it boiled down to for me was super simple. If you really believe, if anyone really believes that color grading S.Cinetone, color grading S.Cinetone out of the Sony a7S III, the FX3, the FX6, the FX9, if anyone really believes that color grading is a real option, then please upload some clips, show me how it is that I'm wrong, and I will be glad to do another video where I talk all about how I was wrong and how that is actually something that is possible. Because anytime that I've attempted to make an adjustment to S.Cinetone in Resolve on my computer, and it doesn't matter if I'm looking at it on my laptop, or if I'm looking at it on my iPad, or if I'm looking at it on my Pro XDR display, I can see noise, blockiness, artifacts in the codec breaking, which really tells me that that codec was not intended to be pushed and pulled in post-production. It was intended to be a straight out of camera delivery codec. And at that, it does, in my opinion, a very good job. And that's really the gist of it. You know, when I uploaded my video last week, I had several people that just wanted to, I call them trolls, because it felt like unjustified comments, or comments that were just coming out of people's butt instead of like out of actual experience. And to me, you know, I say proof is in the pudding, kind of like what I just showed you, right? S-Log3, S-Gamut3, Cine, I drop in my LUT and instantly the image looks way better, even on some extreme corrections. So that's not something that we could accomplish, which is the reason why I'm doing this live stream, because I ran out of time today, because as I mentioned, we're revamping all of our LUTs to make sure that everybody who has had them or who has downloaded them gets the best possible out of me, my team, and everything that we've, you know, done before. So let me look at some of these comments. I'm not going to take everybody's, you know, hours and hours like I normally do on these live streams. But I want to see here. Let's see. Okay, that was fine. That was fine. Appreciate your videos. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you taking the time to comment. You guys are awesome. Edson, thanks for letting me know. Thanks for doing this. What about dropping a LUT on S.Cinetone? Yeah, if I drop a LUT on S.Cinetone, I'm going to break it. And maybe I'll do that once I finish reading these comments, just so you guys can see it. And obviously, and maybe it's not so obvious, but LUTs in general, right? Like for example, the LUTs that we release, the LUTs that I release, that I sell through my YouTube channel, through Gumroad, on my own website, and so on. Those LUTs assume two things. One of them is that your exposure is dead on. And when I say your exposure, let me see if I could show my desktop again. All right, so I'm going to show you what I mean by exposure is dead on. I'm going to expand this so that we can, I think I'm going to expand this. Let's see here. All right. Okay. We don't need to see the waveform. I just need to see the waveform and the vector scope. All right. So I got to move stuff around again because I'm out of space on this little tiny screen. All right. So here we're able to see exactly how I expose this image. And when I mean the LUT is expecting that you nail exposure, I mean the highlights, which is everything up on top, is not exceeding this 1023 line, which is 100 IRE. And it is also expecting that you are not crushing any dark areas. So nothing is going lower than 0. That's what it's expecting. When we're looking at S.Cinetone, this is again straight out of the camera, and look at where this is at already, not to mention the fact that highlights in fact are clipped, and I can see that here. I didn't crush any dark areas, but I did clip some highlights. So dropping a LUT onto this is going to instantly blow out more highlights. And I don't even know if I have a LUT that I can download or I can add. Well, let's try the airy LUT. This is not going to look nice. But this is what happens. And if I blow this up, I have artifacts infringing that is happening because this codec is being stressed. And obviously this LUT was not made for this. But that is the problem with S.Cinetone and dropping LUTs on top of it. It just doesn't work. That's not what it's made for. Yeah, I don't have any. There is no such thing as a Sony S.Cinetone LUT. So I don't have a way of actually doing that because that wouldn't make any sense. This codec is made to be used exactly the way that it comes out of the camera. So going back to what the LUTs expect, right? They expect that you nailed exposure. So nothing is clipped in the highlights, nothing is crushed on the dark areas. The second thing that it expects is that you got the white balance correct. And if you didn't get the white balance correct, then that you at least in one clip have a tool like my color checker here that I can use to correct my white balance if I screwed it up. And if you get those two things right, then basically, I'm gonna go turn this back on. I can drop any one of my LUTs. I'm gonna use Tando because everybody likes teal and orange, which by the way, that's what I call my teal and orange LUT, Tando. And just like that, I mean, there's like no noise, there's no artifacts, there's no blockiness, there's no blotchy skin, there isn't a problem. And that's because S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine is made for post-production in a color workflow. So let's minimize resolve again. Close this guy out. I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna try to go back to my regular view. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I guess now you know that if I was to drop a LUT on S.Cinetone, I'm gonna break it, and it's simply because it's not designed to take on additional LUTs. So Nick, is A7 III, FX3 still sharpened in camera? The A7S III is sharpened in camera. There's less adjustment. So this is kind of, you know, I have to walk this fine line because everybody already thinks that I hate Sony. But when very few people choose to acknowledge when they think that I hate Sony is that I own a couple of Sony cameras. So whatever. But this is the limitation of the Sony a7S III. And some people may not agree with me, but this is a fact. And everyone who has been shooting on Sony a7S III for more than a week or a month will tell you the same thing. How you paint in camera literally sets boundaries and limitations around what you're able to do in post-production. So what I mean by that very specifically is that even if I'm shooting an S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine, and I go above 95 IRE, so I don't set my zebras so that it warns me if I go above 95, I will end up with clipped information in the highlights that I cannot recover, and they will look very much like video. It is what it is. So that's really important to know about the Sony a7S III. So there is a lot of limitation when you choose to shoot with that camera, because essentially you have to get everything about your exposure, about your scene, about what it is that you're capturing right in camera, so that you can then manipulate that image, and by manipulate I mean color grade your image, right? Not color correct, but color grade your image in a way that is not going to compromise the quality of the image. With the FX3, I feel like I have a lot more wiggle room or grace or potential to recover from a mistake. With the Sony a7S III, I don't feel like I have that. And, other people may disagree, but again, if your exposure is correct, you have way more room. If you push your exposure like you're running and gunning and you can't control light all the time, and you're making decisions about whether to crush dark areas or blow out highlights, you're setting some hard limits for yourself in post-production that you won't be able to recover from. If you're a YouTuber and your YouTube space, your shooting area, is always controlled, or you know exactly what all your boundaries are, then you're gonna have a lot more success. If you're running and gunning and working like we do on location, multiple locations, several times during the week, where we may have 50, 60, 70% control over light, but not always 100%, then it becomes a bigger issue. And I think that that's what we don't get out of, all the YouTubers that praise the camera. They're able to do that because they work in repeatable environments, whereas some of us that are in multiple environments multiple times a week very quickly find the limitations of some of these cameras. So all that to say, you're limited when you choose the Sony a7S III, and it doesn't mean it's a bad camera. It just means you need to understand the camera, know the gear, so that you can make the right choices that are going to give you the flexibility that you may need in post-production. So I'm not bashing the camera, because every camera has strengths and weaknesses. And at this point, it has nothing to do with the hardware. It has to do with our willingness to understand the hardware and our willingness to invest in what we know in this craft and putting in the bench time to produce something wonderful when we bring it into the post-production workflow. That's what it's really all about. Shoot. Okay, so Tyler. Okay. So Tyler's just talking to somebody else. That's cool. Let's see. Rod. I hate color grading. I want to tell stories. Anything that gets me most of the way there is good. Probably shoot something else in low light. So, filmmaking is not a solo sport, Rod. And I think this community, because we have a community of people that are at all different levels in their career, right? In fact, Randall, who is in the chat, you guys might want to hit him up. He's had a very long professional career. Yeah, he could tell you guys better than I can. But filmmaking, where I was going with it is, it's not a solo sport. So just because you don't like the color grading process doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It just means that maybe what your strength is somewhere else in the pipeline of making this image, telling this story. And when you find that other person, that other group, that other partner, whatever it is that you want to call it, a producer, a color grading guy, women, female, whatever, that can handle that piece for you, instantly whatever story you're telling just leveled up, because all of us can probably do a good job at putting something out, but the minute that you bring another person, another perspective in, another view, another set of skills into what it is that you're trying to tell, instantly, even if it's like a cereal commercial, instantly it becomes better, because there's more knowledge, there's more perspective, and there's more time to be put into that project to make it look better. This is why in cinema or in commercial productions, we have set designers, we have producers, we have PAs, we have directors of photography, we have, the agency overlooking sometimes what the project that we're working on. We don't generally operate camera, DP, and also gaff, right? Because if everybody does their piece of the project to the best of their ability, we all end up with a much better end result. Because if I had to run around and gaff and then also do my own audio and then also do my own focus pulling, I'm going to miss something. And that doesn't mean that we don't end up in some cases having to work by ourselves. Of course we do. But if ever, and it doesn't matter if it's during pre-production, during production, or post-production, if we can add people to those teams, it will be a better end result, period. So just keep that in mind, because that's really what it's all about. Like if you try to do it all by yourself, you're going to get really frustrated, spend a lot of money, and you may not get the satisfaction that you need to keep pushing and exercising that creative muscle. That's just my take. I don't have to be right. Randall, good to see you, brother. Yeah, this Randall that I just put up on the screen is the guy that I'm telling you all has had a very, terrific professional career over many years. And I believe he's a tremendous resource, and I'm so glad that he's part of this community. So thanks, Randall, for stepping in. Thanks, Rod. Yeah, if we did make these LUTs available, if anybody's interested, or anybody's shooting on these cameras and you guys want them, they are available. So thanks, Randall, for letting me know the audio is good. Appreciate it. Shazam, the iPad producer. So I just saw a story. I believe maybe it was a post, maybe it wasn't a story. But did you get the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro? Like, that's already shipping. Like, it's kind of unheard of for Blackmagic, right? Like, normally they announce something and then, you kind of cross your fingers and hope that you'll get it at some point. But if I saw that, that's pretty freaking awesome. FX3 might be my next camera after another 6K Pro. Oh, so you did get the Pro. So the FX3 is a confusing camera for me. So here's my FX3 journey. Initially, when the FX3 was leaked, right? That was like the worst kept secret ever. When it was leaked, I thought, okay, even if it is a Sony A7S III in a different body, to me, it's worth it for two reasons. One is if I'm doing a live production and I'm running S.Cinetone on the FX6, I can run S.Cinetone on the FX3. The cameras match, the live goes well, type of thing. So that was one reason why I was like, I'll pay the extra tax. Second reason was it has a built-in fan. And here's something that I've said on this channel multiple times and in my posts on social media multiple times that very few people will ever admit. But Sony cameras, like Sony A7 III, for example, excuse me, drink some water. the Sony a7 III has the potential of having heat issues, particularly if you're using it on set for more than a couple of hours, as in maybe more than 3 hours. I know this for a fact. So to me, the Sony a7S III, which I haven't had any heat-related issues with at all, moving into the FX3 and having that stamp of cinema line on the body with a fan basically made that entire idea just completely go away. You know, the possibility of me having to deal with heat issues, because cameras that have fans, like any other camera that I've ever owned, including Red or Canon, or even Sony for that matter, when they have a fan, I've never ever even come close to having any heat related issues. So to me, that was like, it's totally worth it. And then Philip Bloom drops his video. And Philip Bloom in his video, in case you guys haven't seen it, you should probably go check out that video. It's kind of long, like, you know, typical of Philip Bloom, because he deep dives. But he said two things that made me second guess me. One of them was running the Sony a7S III continuously for multiple hours without any heat problems does not damage the camera or the sensor in any way. So why did I second guess that? One, I told you guys about the Sony a7 III, right? Not S3, but Sony a7 III having heat related issues on really long productions. And the way that like I had a conversation about this even with Armando, where we compared it to a vehicle, right? Just because a vehicle can hit 200 miles an hour, it doesn't mean it can hit 200 miles an hour and maintain that indefinitely. Because redlining your car over time will result in engine problems, on top of other types of problems too, right? Like, that's just the way that it works. And it doesn't matter if it's a Porsche, a Mercedes, a Ferrari, or a Honda. You redline a car continuously and you will blow that engine. It's going to happen. So that was my thought with the Sony a7S III. If I'm always redlining the Sony a7S III, at some point, I can expect a failure. But then Philip drops this video where he recorded, I don't know how many hours, and he's telling you that it is not damaging the camera. So that made me second guess me. The second thing, of course, is the firmware update that now gave us all who have a Sony a7S III S.Cinetone. So I've already purchased the XLR adapter for that camera. So I already have XLR audio, and I can have up to 4 channels of audio going into the Sony a7S III. So what is really my reason for going FX3? Just to pay more money? And maybe Shazam, you know, in a super long way of saying the exact same thing that I'm saying here, maybe you don't need an FX3. I mean, I don't know, but maybe you don't. Maybe you save the extra, what is it, $500 or $600? I don't know. It might be worth it. Randall, yeah, for sure. The hype is on Cinetone. So, I mean, Cinetone for the productions that I do is, unless it's a live production, it's never going to be used. For live, yes, it'll be used. Do we do live, 4 times a week like we do all the other productions? No. We do lives maybe 2 or 3 times per month. So to me, S.Cinetone is kind of hyped. And if I didn't have S.Cinetone, I would have just used the standard profile if I was doing a live production. That's the truth. Okay, so let's see. Hola, ¿cómo está? jnair.com. Which codec is he talking about? The codec that I'm talking about specifically in this video that is superior to S.Cinetone is S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine. Way better. Let's see. What would you have a baked-in look on a codec? Well, again, I think the reason why the S.Cinetone baked-in look is there and it's available is because they're catering to a lot of different people, right? So Sony cameras have been popular thanks to YouTubers for a number of years. So when people are starting out and they're looking at their favorite YouTuber and their favorite YouTuber is using a Panasonic camera or a Sony camera, and they're affordable because Sony releases so many cameras that they lose value so fast, you can pick them up in the used market, relatively for less money than other brands, let's just say. They buy them. So rather than needing to learn how to use the camera, Sony is like making it super easy and convenient. And this is actually true even of the FX3. And maybe I'll make a video about that, because really what Sony is doing with things like auto ND and auto exposure tools and S.Cinetone and autofocus that is super sticky and has eye autofocus and so on and so forth, what they're really doing is they're turning their cameras into this simple to use. Just aim it at whatever you're trying to film, and the camera's going to do all the decision making for you. Kind of like, if you were shooting stills and you put your camera on automatic. I'm not that guy, but I'm thinking there are people, clearly there are, otherwise Sony wouldn't be putting these features in the cameras, that want those things or need those things simply because it's easier for them. And if you're a YouTuber, I mean, how cool is that? I don't have to worry about my exposure. I don't have to worry about my autofocus or my focus in general. If something gets too bright because I'm vlogging or something gets too dark, the auto ND is gonna bail me out. I mean, I really think that is one of the reasons. For some of us who don't live in that space and we are working for other companies, clients, and brands so that we can make a living, some of those things are, fluff, really, because I'm a control freak. I'm still very much, I like to be in control of how much ND I use. I like to be in control of what my iris is set at. I like to be in control of my focus and how quickly I focus on something or not. And that doesn't take away from the ability of these cameras. It's just that I haven't had it before, and I'm still comfortable working manually with the rest of my stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if that is the answer as to why someone would have a baked-in look, but that could be a look. Okay, a great outro question: FX6 or C70, which should I get? That question really should be based on which lenses you already own, right? Like unless you're really willing, and say you have a bunch of Sony lenses, you should go with the FX6. And if you already have a lot of Canon lenses, you should go with the C70. From what they're able to produce and get for you, the FX6 in extreme low light will outperform the C70. In any other scenario, the C70 is either on par or better than the FX6, in my opinion, based off of, a few months of using the C70 and about 3 weeks or 4 weeks of using the FX6. I don't know. It's kind of a tough call, but I really do think it's kind of like, which ecosystem are you already in, right? That's kind of what it boils down to. Let's see, John, Is the S.Cinetone the best picture profile out of the camera that different or don't need a grade? So John, if you're meaning that doesn't need a grade, S.Cinetone is the best picture profile out of the camera, yes. The only potential thing that you will have to adjust is white balance. On the Sony a7S III, white balance is easy. On the FX6, white balance sucks. It's not great. Okay, let's see. Shazam. Cool. You're answering a question. Hey, James, thanks for stopping by, dude. Appreciate it. Always, always. Yeah, it's always nice to see James. James, he's one of the hardest working pros that publishes on YouTube with so much regularity. I don't know how you do it, buddy, but hats off to you. Let's see here. Justin, you can absolutely correct and grade S.Cinetone. Of course, Justin's going to say that. So Justin, do you have a clip that you can share with all of us where you color corrected and then color graded S.Cinetone? And if you do, please post it. And in fact, if you're still in the live stream, please post it now and I will show it to everyone here because I want to be wrong. I just don't think I am. And my colleagues who work at the same level, higher levels than me, who have experience, will say the same thing. You won't need to push and pull it as far as log. Do you know why that is, Justin? Since you want attention, I'll just give it to you here for a second. I'm going to show you my desktop. I'm going to bring up Resolve again. The reason why it doesn't need to be pushed and pulled in post-production is because the waveform has already been expanded, Justin. There isn't any room to push and pull. The highlights are already clipping and the shadows or the dark areas are right at the mark where they're going to clip. This is the reason why there isn't room to make adjustments. The only thing I could try to do would be to reduce the contrast. Beyond that, I am effectively damaging the image if I try to expand my midtones or create a softer curve on my highlights or make my dark areas darker or less dark. I'm effectively damaging the image. So I'm just going to leave it at that because it's kind of one of those conversations that you and I are going to continue to agree to disagree. And as much as you want to be right, you're not going to be right. But if you are, please post the link. I'm just going to put your comment up here because I think everybody's voice should be heard. But I'm telling you, put your money where your mouth is, show me a clip, and then I'll be happy to say that I'm wrong. But if you can't do that, then arguing and pretending like you know what you're talking about isn't valid. Because that's what I did with this live stream. I showed the two extreme examples, and S.Cinetone is not made for that. So I'm going to leave that alone now. So the S.Cinetone breaks if you try to do a teal and orange grade, for example. Yes, you begin to get artifacts, Randall. And and maybe I'm just spoiled with my monitor. I grade on the Apple Pro XDR display. And if I begin to see the image fall apart, then I back off because I don't want my name, my company associated with something that isn't pro level, because I'm not the cheapest person in town. So it needs to just always be great. Jamie Jr., that's why I sold my Sony A7S III and keep my Panasonic S1. I'm just going to tell you, I know a lot of people that have gone in this direction, exactly what Jamie said here. So, all right, Justin, I'm not going to put your comments on there anymore. We're done. Need to know your equipment, absolutely. What James Jackson just said, or said at that moment, because I'm guessing I'm really behind here. Good job, thank you, appreciate it. People who own specific brands and takes it personal, they get offended. Yeah, they do. Especially when their cameras get critiqued. Yeah, they do. Or when their skill sets get critiqued. Then it really turns into a bowl of shit. It just does. And you're right, there isn't a camera that is perfect at all, ever. So that's awesome. Shazam, I can't wait to see what you get out of that camera. So please, DM me or let me know. I'm subscribed, but sometimes, and I don't know why, but it seems like YouTube doesn't send notifications anymore when videos are published. At least I don't get any, which is really kind of annoying. Let's see. I'm doing my S.Cinetone adjustments with FX9. The output is nearly polished, but in Resolve I usually just push the contrast and saturation and have a pretty decent image. So I mean, I don't know how you could actually stretch out the contrast more. Are you saying that, Daniel, that you're able to expand the contrast? Because the waveform is already, like, it's ready to clip right out of camera. So I guess I'd like to see both the clip and then also the waveform so I can have a better understanding. Let's see here. Could it be that the A7S line is going away since they turned to the FX3? Maybe. But, I think Sony just likes to sell cameras. So, they've never had any issue with having products that closely compete with one another. So maybe they will kill it. Maybe they just will carry two different versions, right? One appealing to maybe the YouTuber and the other one appealing to working professionals. I don't know. Searching for a Venice to see how it really compares. Yeah, I don't have a Venice. Levi Whitney may be able to help. I believe he's shot a couple projects on the Venice, so he may have some clips that he can share, and I don't know if he will or wouldn't. We talked about that already, sorry. I've beat some old heat problems. Sony cameras never had problems with longevity, so I agree with Philip Bloom. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's good. And I mean, clearly, if somebody's going to dedicate that many hours into that one single test and they haven't come across an issue, I got to believe it too, because I'm not the guy that's going to spend 9 hours on the test. Oh, cool, you're working. That's awesome. Thanks for joining while you're working. Appreciate it. It is Saturday night. Never used Sony. Is S.Cinetone the equivalent to Canon's YDR profile? Kind of, except in my opinion, S.Cinetone gives you a little bit more depth to the image versus the Canon YDR. Canon YDR for me, I've never liked it. I've never liked it because it reminds me too much of video cameras. I'm going to leave that alone before I get a bunch of people hating me. Let's see. I would say it's a good comparison to YDR from Canon. Cool. And here's the other thing. Like for me, I've always, regardless of the Canon camera that I'm using, if it has S-Log2, then that's the space that I'm in. And YDR, just, I don't know. It's not for me. It's not for me. Shout out. Thank you. Well, thanks, Life in Common. Really appreciate it, dude. That's a really nice compliment, and it really means a lot. It really, really does mean a lot. Cool. Let's see. Unless you have an amazing new tech in the sensor will lose its quality if heating over temp is ongoing issue. You know, even happens to lights, though, right? Like my older lights, the color temperature that they were. You know what? I'm not going to out anyone. There are some lights that change in color temperature over time, and they're super popular, especially with YouTubers. So the longer you use them, yeah, the light quality changes. So I would imagine that sensors have to be the same way because car engines are that way. You know, it's still electronics, but you know, maybe not. Maybe some things are made to handle heat. I don't know. Andrew Thomas, I also think that baked-in looks can sometimes save time in certain jobs. So that is true. I agree with that. Sometimes yeah. Fuji Eterna is pleasing enough. Fuji Eterna is one of those baked-in looks that I have zero problems with. That Fujifilm Eterna look, I don't care if it's, you know, 10 stops of dynamic range, 9 stops of dynamic range. It is beautiful, period. So yeah, totally agree. Cool, awesome. Let's see here, Andre. Hey, Carlos got to see you've considered Sony in your workflow. Will you try the new Sony A1? I don't know. The main reason why we decided to try Sony is because of projects that we have lined up and already signed off on, where we've collected deposits, where we're collaborating with other people that made us pick up these cameras to make everybody's life easier, including our own. So I don't know. I think that the A1 looks like a really, really interesting camera. I am finding that I am really enjoying working in that 4K to 6K space. I still love shooting on Monstro in 8K full frame. But most of my clients don't need it. So 6K is like a perfect sweet spot for me. And I don't know. That's my long way of saying I don't know. Maybe the Sony A1, but you know, we have a lot of cameras in stock now here at the studios, or I say here at the studio, I'm at home, but in the studio. So I'm not sure that we're in a hurry to pick up another camera. Let's see. You mentioned that you are filming jewelry. What cameras are you using? I'm leaning towards Super 35 for deeper depth of field. So absolutely. So yes. In fact, and this is going to also sound kind of crazy, but micro four thirds cameras, in my opinion, are the best for jewelry if you're just taking a shot of that jewelry piece. If you're doing jewelry that is on someone's ear, neck, you know, body, hands, whatever, then Super 35 is a sweet spot, really sweet spot for jewelry. Full frame is a quick way to make a lot of mistakes in that type of shoot, for me anyway. Darrington Jones, I think the definition of grading for Justin doesn't explain a far traditionally defined, but you can add contrast, saturation, and color to Rec 709. It's just not a fine-tuned approach. So what Darrington Jones just said is true, except that is not color grading, that is color correcting, right? If you're adjusting white balance, contrast, and exposure, that is not color grading. That is color correction, for what it's worth. I will stay Monstro. You know what? There's no way Monstro is ever leaving our studio. Monstro encompasses everything that I love about this industry and what I can get out of that image. So, in my opinion, that is the top shelf. And I've never shot an, Arri Alexa 65, and maybe that's, maybe that is the next tier. But Monstro is in a league all of its own, in my opinion, for a lot of reasons. I really love shooting on Monstro, even with all the extras that go along with it. Let's see, a little off track. Canon ever fix the R5, R6 overheating in the shoot? No. I think one thing that we have all come to know and understand about Canon is that what we buy is what we end up with. Like, if anything gets better, it's going to get, slightly better, kind of like what they did with that firmware update. But that's it. It's not going to change. It just isn't, because that's just the way Canon is. I know it's not on topic, but are you going to reconsider Blackmagic with the new 6K Pro with the newer color science version 5? So here's my main the short answer, Marshall, is no. And the main reason for me not considering the Blackmagic 6K Pro is the smaller size Super 35 sensor. I'm not a huge fan. And I don't know this to still be true, and maybe some of you who have the camera or who have experience with the camera or actually watched the entire live stream know the answer to this, but are we still, or are people still locked into 50p instead of 60p on the 6K Pro, the Pocket 6K Pro? And if the answer is yes, I'm in North America. So that's a big reason for no. And then also the external drives that can actually capture in that small, like 4:1 compression ratio, which is what I shoot when I'm on red, 4:1, 5:1, 7:1 if I have to, and that's if everybody is like dragging me to do 7:1 compression, but I like to stay at 5:1. The drives they're not super reliable when you're shooting at that 50p. At least they weren't when I had the original Pocket 6K. So those are the main reasons why I wouldn't go that route. I understand that if you have an Ursa Mini Pro G2, this is a perfect B camera for it. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense for those people. I have Sony cameras, Canon cameras, and Red cameras. So I'm not going to go that way. I guess is the shortest way to get to what I was saying. Carlos, it's me, Adam. Oh, Adam. So this is your name on YouTube. This is good to know. Darrington, you spoke about being able to control focus. I know this is off topic, but what's your focusing system when shooting Canon? So most of the time when we're shooting, that's Abby, in case you guys saw that little cameo. Most of the time when I'm shooting on a Canon, I'm using the Canon CNE prime lenses, and either I have the, it's made by Tilta. It's a focusing system by Tilta. Shit, I can't remember the name. Anyway, that's what I'm using, or I'm physically operating and doing my own focus. That's what I use. Rod, sad because R5, R6 are great cameras except for overheating. That's true. They are. That's it. I got through all the comments. For the first time in a really long time on these live streams, I actually made it through all the comments. So that's good. It's also Saturday night. Thanks for everybody hanging in there with me. We've gone over an hour. I hope that I kind of, proved the point. Again, if anybody's interested in the LUTs, there's a link in the description. You guys are, free to check them out. I'd love your feedback, and we're going to continue to pump these out and hopefully continue to help all of us level up and speed up our post-production workflows with assets. Again, just want to thank everyone for taking the time to hang out with me. You guys are rock stars, and I will catch you guys on the next live stream. Thanks a lot.
All these politics checking off the list, religious hypocrites trying to sell me other doctrine, trying to sell me something for my soul, trying to sell me something for my soul. Now, fiery-eyed brimstone teachers trying to tell me something different, but I ain't gonna listen. No, I'ma start my own religion. I'ma start my own religion. I got roses going in my backyard. Every soul that's lost is a tear from God, and I'm hopeful that one day we'll see every wall we've built will crumble. All the benefits that the richer people get is the poor get poor and the wealthy get rich. Now, I don't think it makes a difference. Chrome a diamond, real affliction. As a TV switches and the salmon gives you pictures out of scrolling, keeps you twitching, but you know there's something different. Now you feel like you're the one that's in control, but are you really in control?